Mom, hey, Mom. Wake up.
Suddenly, I was shaken awake, and when I groggily opened my eyes, I saw my daughter's tense face staring back at me through my blurry vision. I slowly sat up and asked her,
What's wrong? Did you have a bad dream?
No, Mom, please. We need to run away from Dad right now. Hurry.
Huh?
That one sentence snapped me out of my sleepy state instantly. The shocking words that followed left me completely stunned. I'm Mary, a typical 35-year-old working mom, raising my 7-year-old daughter. Our daughter, Katie, is adorable and the light of our lives, but she's a bit different. Or maybe I should say, a little strange.
Mom, you're forgetting your umbrella.
Huh?
The weather forecast that day was for mostly sunny skies with some clouds. Although the clouds were a bit thick, there were still patches of clear sky. I was about to head out the door when Katie called after me.
It's fine, sweetie. There's only a 10% chance of rain today.
But Mom, you're going to get soaked. I saw it in my dream. Please take your umbrella.
Reluctantly, I took the umbrella she handed me and headed to work. Just before I left for the day, I got caught in an unexpected downpour, what they call a flash storm. I couldn't believe it. When I returned home, drenched, I saw Katie's umbrella also soaking wet in the stand. As soon as I walked in the door, she greeted me with a proud smile.
See, I told you, right?
Ever since Katie was little, she's always been able to predict things. Whether it's the weather or what we'd have for dinner, it was almost as if she had some kind of psychic power, though calling it that would be an exaggeration. It was more like a small, mysterious ability. Because of this, she sometimes stood out when playing with her friends, but she didn't seem to care at all. As her parents, we embraced it as part of her unique personality. Aside from that, she was just a normal, sweet little girl. What worried me more was my husband, Ken. We're the same age and met through a matchmaking service. Back then, I was all about my career. I was earning well, but hadn't had any real relationships. My parents were getting impatient, so I signed up for a matchmaking service. I have to admit that Ken was even more handsome than he is now, and he swept me off my feet. In addition, he was a feminist, and I fell for him hard. We both wanted to get married. So things moved quickly, and here we are, 10 years into our marriage. Though, he's been coming home really late lately, often not until the morning. Even though Katie's 7 now, she still needs a lot of attention. Nevertheless, it's tough balancing my job, housework, and taking care of her alone. When I asked him about it, he said,
Everything costs money these days, and we need to save as much as we can for Katie. You never know what could happen, and that's why I'm working so hard.
With him saying it's for Katie, I couldn't really complain. That's why I've been juggling my job, housework, and single-handedly raising our daughter every day. Then one day, something unusual happened. Ken came home early for once, but he looked really troubled. After sending Katie off to another room, I asked him,
What's wrong? Did something happen?
Actually, I want to quit my job.
What?
I was completely caught off guard. After Katie went to bed, he explained that things weren't going well at work, and he wasn't finding any fulfillment. Going to work had become a misery.
Please, I'm just so worn out. I'll find another job soon, and until then, I'll handle everything at home.
I didn't want him to quit, but I also didn't want him to push himself to the point of breaking.
All right.
Reluctantly, I agreed to his request. Before long, I started focusing more on my job, and Ken became a house husband. However, his way of doing things at home was sloppy compared to mine, especially when it came to meals. I'd come home after 9 p.m., exhausted, and the dinner he made would often be either burnt or too strongly flavored. When I first tasted his cooking, I had to ask,
What is this? You didn't give the same thing to Katie, did you?
No, I made something lighter for her. I figured you were tired and would prefer something with a strong flavor.
This flavor is too strong. I'm fine with the same lighter food you give Katie, and I'd appreciate it if you could make the meals a bit more balanced.
No matter how many times I said this, the flavors and menu barely changed. If I tried to leave food, he'd say,
I'll save it for tomorrow and eat it with Katie.
No way. If anyone's going to eat it, it's me. Reluctantly, I'd force myself to finish it, and Ken would try to make up for it by bringing out dessert afterward. He also started making snacks and whiskey or cocktails for me every night, thinking it was a way to show his appreciation. I hadn't been much of a drinker before, and I never used to eat sweets so late, but I couldn't just dismiss his good intentions. Even though I had my frustrations, he was still putting in the effort, and not having to handle any housework was a relief. I decided to overlook it most of the time. About 6 months after I became the sole breadwinner, I finally had a full day off with nothing planned. Though, I wasn't feeling well and ended up lying around from the morning. Lately, I'd been feeling sluggish, with headaches even though I didn't have a fever. I'd fall asleep right after eating, too. Maybe I'd been pushing myself too hard at work. Luckily, Ken had taken Katie to the local shopping mall and said he'd contact me if anything came up. It was thoughtful of him to give me some quiet time to rest, and I was grateful. I must have dozed off.
Hey, Mary.
The sound of the front door opening and Ken's voice woke me up. It was already evening. I hadn't eaten much and had been asleep since the morning.
Hi, Katie. Sorry I didn't get to spend the day with you. Did you have fun?
Katie, holding a small mascot toy, looked down and nodded quietly. Her behavior seemed a little off.
What's wrong? Did something happen?
She's probably just tired from all the walking. Katie, why don't you go back to your room and relax?
Ken said, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. Katie nodded and went up to her room. After she was out of sight, I whispered to Ken,
Hey, she seemed upset. Did you scold her or something?
No, I didn't do anything. She's just tired, I think. Oh, by the way, about dinner.
I cringed inside. I was so tired of his cooking.
Dinner. You know what, I'll cook tonight. I feel so much better after resting all day.
Okay, sure, but let me handle the drinks and dessert. I picked up something from that bakery you like.
I saw the logo of a famous cream puff shop on the bag he was holding. Tonight, I'll make something I like, tastier and low in calories. Later, we all had dinner together, and for the first time in a while, I decided to sleep in Katie's room. She seemed to be feeling better, but still had a hint of anxiety in her eyes, so I wanted to spend more time with her.
Mom?
The bedroom, just the two of us. Katie, wrapped in a blanket, whispered in such a small voice that I almost missed it.
Please, don't drink tonight.
Huh?
Could it be one of her little premonitions again? Seeing the seriousness in her eyes, I nodded, and she seemed relieved, closing her eyes. I decided to get into bed before Ken could prepare his usual dessert and drinks, and I fell asleep early. Surely, he wouldn't wake me up just to drink with him. If he tried, I would just pretend to be asleep. With those thoughts, I closed my eyes.
Mom, hey, Mom. Wake up.
I was suddenly shaken awake and groggily opened my eyes. I must have actually fallen asleep because through my blurry vision, I saw Katie's anxious face. I checked the bedside clock. It was 2 a.m. That's when I realized Ken wasn't beside me. Maybe he'd gone to the bathroom? I slowly sat up and asked,
What's wrong? Did you have a bad dream?
No, Mom, please. We need to run away from Dad right now. Hurry.
What?
That one sentence snapped me out of my sleepy state instantly. What did she just say? Still in shock, I lowered my voice and asked her,
Why? Why are you saying that?
Now's our chance while Dad's not here. If we don't, you're going to get hurt, like in an accident, or you'll get sick.
What? I was stunned by her words, and seeing my reaction, Katie couldn't hold back anymore and started crying. I held her in my lap, gently rubbing her trembling back until she calmed down and began to explain. She said that after she came back from the bathroom at the mall, she saw Ken talking on the phone.
Don't interrupt someone when they're on the phone.
That was what I had reminded her countless times. So, she quietly approached him.
Dad said she'll be gone soon, either in an accident or by getting sick. Then we'll get the insurance money and we can be together. He was talking to someone on the phone.
Who? Who was he talking to?
I don't know. At first, I thought he was talking to you, but he wasn't. He was saying mean things about you, and then he said, I love you.
If this was true, Ken was planning to kill me and start a new life with someone else. Katie, still crying, continued.
He said, I love you, to someone who wasn't you. I was so shocked I called out, Dad. He quickly hung up the phone, asked how long I had been there, and I said I just got there. Then he smiled and said, Don't tell Mom. If you don't, you'll get a new, cute, and kind mom soon.
Tears streaming down her face, she clung to me tightly.
But I don't want a cute or kind mom. I love my mom. I want you, Mom. I don't want anyone else.
She sobbed loudly as she clung to me. In that moment, the guilt of putting her through this and the anger I felt toward Ken overwhelmed me, and I began to cry too. Katie had heard her own father plotting against me, and despite her fear, she was brave enough to come to me. I can only imagine how terrifying it was for her. How much courage it must have taken for her. When I checked Ken's closet and saw that his favorite shoes were gone, everything clicked. I realized that Katie was telling the truth, and any lingering trust one had in Ken evaporated. After holding Katie for a while, I carried her down to the front door. According to her, this wasn't the first time he'd left the house in the middle of the night. She had seen him sneaking out several times when she'd gotten up to use the bathroom. How had I missed this? If Katie, who rarely gets up, saw him doing that several times, it must have been happening frequently. Katie clutched at my shirt as if to remind me that it wasn't the time for reflection. I had to act, and thanks to her warning, my mind felt clearer than ever. I looked straight into her eyes.
Katie, if we run away from Dad now, we might never see him again. Are you okay with that? Will you come with me?
Yes. I'm scared of Dad. I want to be with you, Mom. I want to stay with you forever.
All right then. I had made my decision. Fortunately, Katie was on summer vacation, so we had some flexibility. I told her to pack her things while I gathered what we needed. When I checked the drawer where I kept important items and found something unexpected, I was shocked. Just in case, I opened a drawer I rarely touch, and my suspicion was confirmed. Fury surged through me, but I knew I had to get us out of the house first. Before dawn, We rushed out and headed to my parents' home. My parents were surprised to see us so early, but once I showed them what I'd found and explained what Katie had overheard, they welcomed us with open arms. After the sun had risen, I sent Ken a message.
Mom got hurt. I'm taking Katie to help her for about a month. Please look after the house while we're gone.
Got it. Don't worry, I'll handle everything here.
For someone whose wife and daughter disappeared overnight, he seemed far too relaxed. I bet he's thinking about how much freedom he'll have now. For now, I'll lay low, but I won't let him get away with this. I owe it to Katie. As soon as we arrived at my parents' house, I looked at Katie's tear-streaked, sleeping face and made a phone call. A month later, after staying at my parents' house, I left Katie with my mom and went back to our home. With my phone in my pocket, I unlocked the door and stepped into the living room. Ken was sitting there, staring at his phone, but when he saw me, he put on a fake smile as if nothing had happened.
Oh, you're back. You could have let me know. You scared me. Hey, how about I make you an iced coffee with lots of milk and sugar, just the way you like it?
The old me might have fallen for that, but not today.
No thanks. I'd rather you sign this,
I said, handing him a marital settlement agreement. He sighed heavily, giving them a quick glance.
A divorce, huh? Well, if it's what you really want, I'll go along with it.
I had expected that reaction, but it still infuriated me. Casually, with a smile on his face, he added,
But since you're the one asking for the divorce, you'll make sure the alimony works out in my favor, right?
What are you talking about? You should be paying me more than you think.
Huh?
He stared at me in confusion, nervously laughing and shaking his head.
Come on, I've supported you all this time. You can't just slap me with that papers and…
Support? You've been cheating, skipping work, and planning to kill me.
Huh?
I couldn't help but laugh at the dumbfounded look on his face. I pulled a small bottle of pills out of a drawer and showed it to him. The label read, "For persistent insomnia, 1 pill guarantees a full night's rest."
I only bought those because I couldn't sleep.
They haven't been touched since I left. I emptied the bottle and took pictures before I left the house. Would you like to compare?
You can't prove I made you take them. You don't have any evidence.
I know all about your affair. I've got plenty of proof.
Huh?
I sat back down, still holding the pill bottle, and pulled out an envelope from my bag, dumping its contents in front of him. Ken froze, his face filled with shock. Of course, he did. The photos I had spread out on the table were printed, enlarged screenshots of his messages to his mistress.
I'm going to skip work so I can see you. Wait for me. I quit my job, so now we can talk even more. I love you. I've got something that'll make sure she doesn't wake up. Then I can see you. Soon, we'll be together. Just wait a little longer, my princess.
Every lie he'd told about working late, every plan to make it look like I'd died in an accident or from an illness, it was all in those messages. Looking back, it made sense. The meals he cooked for me were loaded with salt, fat, and sugar, followed by overly sweet desserts. It's no wonder I started feeling worse. As if that wasn't enough, he was probably tampering with my drinks while I was in the shower. I never drank much, so I didn't notice, but when I had the same drink at my parents' house, the difference in taste was startling. That's when I knew for sure.
Ever since I started eating your food, I felt strangely exhausted. I'd fall asleep right away, but never felt rested. Makes sense, doesn't it? Alcohol and this medication, a terrible combination. Who knows what could have happened?
Ken's face turned pale, his eyes darting nervously.
But how did you even get all this? Did you go through my phone? That's an invasion of privacy.
No, I didn't. She gave it to me herself.
What?
I flipped over another envelope, and he turned even paler. Of course, he did. The envelope was full of photos of him with a much younger woman, all over each other. As soon as I got back to my parents' house, believing what Katie had told me, I hired a private investigator to follow Ken. He had no idea I suspected anything. Less than 3 days after we left, he'd brought his mistress home, playing house like they were newlyweds. It wasn't hard to track her down either. I knew her real name and where she worked in no time.
A few days ago, I made a deal with your mistress. I showed her the photos and told her that if she didn't testify in my favor and hand over the evidence, I'd sue her for conspiring to commit murder with you. She gave me her phone and said I could do whatever I wanted with it.
Ken looked between the photos and his phone, mumbling something like "so that's why" or "she betrayed me." I placed my finger lightly on the papers sitting on the table.
Now, let's get to the point. I have more than enough evidence here to go to the police, but for our daughter's sake, I don't want to make her father a criminal.
Then,
Sign here. You'll also be paying alimony and child support.
wait. It was just a fling. Divorce? No, come on.
Fling or not, it doesn't matter. You betrayed your family. You terrified our daughter. You tried to kill me. Do you really think I'd forgive you after all that?
As I said that, he collapsed to his knees, grabbing at my legs and glaring at me with a twisted expression.
It's your fault. You're the one who's no fun. You really think I'll just let you walk out of here?
He raised his fist. I pursed my lips and glared at him, pulling out my phone and holding it up to his face.
I've been on a call ever since I walked in.
What?
He froze, his fist still in the air. The grip on my leg loosened, and I quickly stood up, gathering the documents I'd brought.
The person on the other end of the call is my dad, along with our attorney. They're waiting right outside, ready to come in at any moment.
No, that's not.
I've been recording everything too, so this will all be used as evidence. From now on, you can speak to me through my attorney.
Ken slumped to the floor, speechless, as I gathered my things and walked out the door. After getting into the car where my father and the attorney were waiting, I let out a long sigh and called my mom, who was watching Katie. When Katie answered the phone, her voice was full of energy.
Mom, are you done talking to Dad?
Yes. Katie, I'm sorry. I talked to him, but we can't live with him anymore.
There was silence on the other end. The guilt of taking her father away from her hit me like a wave then. I had prepared myself for this, but still.
I'm so sorry, Katie.
Mom, it's okay. I understand. I'll be here with you from now on.
Her gentle, reassuring words made my nose sting with the onset of tears. My father, sitting next to me, put a comforting hand on my shoulder as I cried. In the end, we divorced. We sold the house as part of the settlement, and I moved back in with my parents. As for Ken, he was jobless and couldn't afford an attorney. He couldn't even pay the alimony after the division of assets, so he had to beg his parents for help. They were furious with him. They ended up paying everything he owed us as part of their apology. I heard from his parents that after he was dumped by his mistress, he tried to find another job but couldn't land anything decent. Now, he's stuck doing part-time work all day, barely scraping by. Meanwhile, I've started a new life with my parents and daughter. Since the move, Katie has stopped saying strange things, and she's made new friends at her new school. She seems genuinely happy now. I know there will be challenges ahead for us, but I'm determined to raise Katie to be happy and strong. That's the vow I've made to myself, looking down at the empty space where my wedding ring once was.